Hello and welcome to the FF News Virtuarena. I'm your host, Doug McKenzie, and on today's session I have Alessio Castelli from CBI joining me to talk about open banking and really what CBI can do in that space, being based out of Italy and really interacting in that European open banking ecosystem. Alessio, thank you so much for joining us here today on the show. For our viewers who might not be aware, could you tell us a bit more about yourself and your role at CBI?
Yeah, thank you, Doug. First of all, let me thank you all for the opportunity of this meeting. It's very important to share outlooks and analysis on the fintech landscape with relevant stakeholders and experts. So let me introduce myself in a few minutes. My name, as you told, is Alessio Castelli, and I am the head of open banking and financial market of CBI. CBI is a public limited consortium company which was established in 2001 by the Italian Banking Association to manage the interbank corporate banking services. Today, CBI is a financial community with more than 400 payment service providers as shareholders and customers. And thanks to its constituency and history, CBI today acts the role of industry utility for the Italian financial community. So today we are designing, developing, and launching on the market some innovative services to support the innovation for the payment service provider, financial institutions, banks, fintechs, and so on. And the CBI main goal today is to design these services, common infrastructures and technological solutions able to support innovation and digitalization within the financial community.
Yeah. Now that is such an all-encompassing goal, but it's so important in this ever-changing ecosystem. So thank you. I'm really excited to hear your expertise on the subject material. So, I mean, as I said, that's kind of an overarching view of what CBI do. But what is it that CBI actually provides all these institutions that are really looking to become quite an innovative part of that ecosystem?
Yeah, during our history, we evolved with different times our services. So the first service that we developed as CBI is represented by the interbank corporate banking, as stated before. And we are talking about a service which provides to companies the opportunity to exchange documents and financial messages, may they be dispositive or informative flows, for instance, among different financial institutions through a single front-end solution, so through a single point of access. Today, this service has been adopted by more than 3 million corporates in Italy through 400 banks in Italy. So we are talking about 99% of the Italian banking market who is adopting CBI in order to offer an innovative service to the companies. And we are talking about the services that see the light 20 years ago. In 2009, CBI expanded the range of its activities, giving the light to the access point service, which instead aims to facilitate the communications among public central administrations and the financial institutions in order to allow to financial institutions to exploit again a single technical point of access in order to have a digital and financial dialogue with all the public administrations, acting like a sort of bridge between different systems. And in 2016, thanks also to our constituency, we developed and launched the CBIL, which is instead an electronic bill payment and presentation and payment service, which enables corporates and final users to visualize and pay digital bills issued by both private and public companies. Today, the service is adopted by final users in order to visualize and make payments of bills issued by private companies. We are talking about 150 companies onboarded on the services, and we are also able to reach more than 22,000 public administrations thanks to the connection with the public administration gateway managed by PagoPA, which is a public company in Italy offering a service or point of interaction, a technological solution for the public administrations. And in 2019, Again, thanks to our constituency, in view of the forthcoming of the second payment service directive, so the PSD2, CBI designed, developed, and launched also the CBI Globe platform. CBI Globe, Global Open Banking Ecosystem, is an open API gateway which could be described like a RegTech platform. The solutions aims to facilitate the interconnections among the traditional banks, namely the account service and payment service provider, as described by the PSD2, with the whole ecosystem of the third parties. May they be financial institutions, banks, payment institutions, telco, utilities, and so on. So this service aims to facilitate all the technical and functional adjustments imposed by PSD2 to all the traditional banks. And we collect all these kinds of technical adjustments together on top of a single solution in order to reduce the overall investments instead requested to the traditional banks. And thanks to these solutions, which have been adopted by more than 300 banks in Italy, and we are talking about the 80% of the Italian market share, we reached savings about the 30% of the overall investments asked to the institutions, to the financial institutions, in order to be compliant with PSD2. And the last 2 years, we worked also together always with all the Italian banks and the main hubs in Europe in order to define and design new value-added services destined also to third parties. And last year, we launched the CBI Globe Active functionality, and we are talking about a new layer destined to third parties in order to reach through a single hub, a single technical connections of the Italian banking market in order to start some business in open banking field. And we are also working on value-added services.
Incredible. I mean, that was such a holistic view, but it really did cover the evolution of CBI. And I think that's so important because open banking and finance has gone through an evolution itself, and it seems like CBI has too. But before we go any further, we've got to really drill down into the topic. And I'm interested in what your definition of open banking is. And really, I'd really love to hear your perspective on the state of maturity, in the Italian market and where it maybe compares, in Western Europe.
Yeah, thank you. Let me give you my opinion. I think that open banking is a new paradigm which is influencing the banking industry. It's not a topic, it's not a service, it is a new paradigm. It's not a local phenomenon, but is a worldwide business trend which is affecting the banking industry across the world. We know that more than 60 countries are approaching open banking in different ways. We know that some countries adopted open banking from a regulatory-driven approach, as for instance the European countries with the Payment Service Directive 2, the PSD2 requirements, or Australia, while other countries are closer to a market-driven approach, like for instance the United States. And the open banking brings also new business model based, for instance, on the data monetization of data stored by payment service users within the bank's databases, as well as the conceptualization of platformifications through which banks can offer innovative front ends that final user can utilize to exploit complex services well integrated via application programming interfaces, for instance, today front ends. So we can say that thanks to open banking, today we can approach 3 different kinds of business model. From one side, we have the open banking driven approach through which the banks can monetize their data. The second one is represented by the platformification, through which the traditional banks, fintechs, and other payment service providers, for instance, rely on a single innovative front end through which they can reach the final users, offering complex services also integrated with third parties solutions like insurance, for instance, or certificates, and so on. And so it's not difficult to see today banks offering opportunity to get certificates again, as well as signing instant insurance or checks accounts data immediately, thanks to the real-time flows allowed by the APIs. Of course, we are talking about new paradigms, new business models, with a strong competition also coming from new entrants, like for instance the big tech companies, which could be able to offer innovative and integrated financial and non-financial services to the final customers, strengthening the last mile relationship between the financial institutions and the final users.
Yeah, and I mean, having that collaboration between the customer and having them at the forefront is going to be increasingly important. So I think that's really important to have addressed. Now, you've also, from my notes, recently published a report on the open banking sector. So CBI are very much firmly in that sphere. What were the key objectives that you went into when creating that report? What did you want to see? What did you think you would see? And what were the kind of the main points that stood out to you, Alessio?
Yeah, the report has been launched this morning, so you can find the full report on our website. So if you are interested, you can also, of course, download the report from our website. The report has the main goal to describe the open banking paradigm with a focus on international landscape and the domestic market, so the Italian banking market. From an international point of view, as stated before, we saw different approaches to open finance and open banking, with some countries adopting open banking through regulations, as Europe, and other countries offering open fields to fintech and financial institutions to shape their open banking. Regardless of the adopted approach, the report shows a market increase on the adoption of open banking, with a growth of the API codes received by the interfaces offered toward fintech and third parties. So we are talking about plus 100% of the API codes in the last year, showing a growing interest toward the open banking from the last mile users. So we are talking about the interest of the final users. At the same time, the overall adoption rate of open banking services is still low. We are talking about an average of 5% of penetration rate on open banking solutions. And these aspects reflect the importance to offer innovative services characterized by a strong customer experience to the final users. Low penetration and adoption rates could represent, in the meantime, high opportunities for the incumbents and new entrants interested in the banking sector, with a focus on payment industry. And the report showed also the importance of technologies with large adoption of cloud computing and API, again, able to support a new business model. The financial institutions, together with the technical providers, are drafting new value-added services going beyond the open banking. And these services have to be more addressed to open finance and open data paradigms, together with the customer needs. From a business perspective, the attention on the value-added services beyond open banking is growing. And that is confirmed also by the level of investments linked with innovative services. We saw that in 2019, a large part of the investments were focused on the compliance activities related to the adjustment of the technical interfaces requested by PSD2 in order to have a dialogue with the third parties, and we are now seeing that the investments are moving from compliance activities to the development of new value-added services. In Italy, it's growing the attention to assume from the financial institutions to assume also the role of third-party providers, so to have an active role within the open banking in order to exploit all the business opportunities enabled by the open banking. And so for this reason, last year we launched on the market also the CBI Global Active functionality, which is very important for third parties interested in having some kinds of business with the account service, service providers, so the traditional banks in Italy and the main hubs in Europe, thanks to the availability of a single point of access, of a single connections, able to reach all the traditional banks. To summarize the outcomes in a nutshell, we can say that open banking is becoming a worldwide phenomenon, and now it's evolving in open finance and open data paradigm. Traditional banks, as well as their technical providers, for instance, and fintechs, new entrants, are now investing in open banking, trying to offer on the market some new services able to exploit all the business opportunities enabled by the open banking. The adoption and penetration rate of the open banking services is still low in some countries, Italy included, and these countries will face relevant opportunities in next months. The report highlights also that more than 60 countries, as stated a few minutes ago, are facing some open banking projects, and more than 130 million of final users are expected to use open banking by 2024.
Wow. I mean, that is we've been speaking about an evolution across this whole conversation. That is quite the fast evolution. That is absolutely rapid, and those numbers are incredible. Obviously, your stat about the increased investment in open banking and the fact that the newer entrants who are typically faster to market are getting involved, you can only agree with those numbers. It sounds absolutely fascinating. Now, in that really interesting paradigm that we've got new entrants, we've got increased investment, the established players are having to react just as quickly as the new players. How is CBI supporting this transition?
Yeah, CBI, in 2019, CBI has developed the CBI Globe platform. We're talking about an open API gateway, which in the first phase of its life has to be assumed like a RegTech solutions, which goals is to support the traditional banks to exploit and to develop all the technical infrastructure interfaces and APIs requested by PSD2 in order to have a dialogue with third parties. So in 2019, we launched CBI Globe RegTech Solutions, which centralize on top of the solution some shared services with a low additional value from for the financial institutions, able to rationalize all the investments requested by the financial institutions to reach the compliance with PSD2. Thanks to the solutions, which today has been adopted by more than 300 banks, we are able to allow to all these 300 banks to be fully compliant with PSD2 and to expose their API interfaces to the third parties in order to be compliant with the Payment Service Directive, and to allow and to enable also third parties to have some payment initiation and account information services with the payment service user of these traditional banks. Of course, third parties will be represented by fintech telco companies with payment institutions authorizations, as well as traditional banks, for instance, which like to have the third parties role. Last year, we launched another service, which is instead called active functionality of CBI Globe. It's another module, another layer of the CBI Globe platform, which instead is addressed to the third parties' needs. So in the first phase of CBI Globe Life, we focus our attention on the technical adjustments requested to the traditional banks. In the second part of the CBI Globe Life, we focus our attention on the third parties, on a third-party facility. So we develop these solutions which aims to facilitate the interconnection among all the third parties in Europe interested in have some business with the financial institutions and the connections to the Italian banking market. So today, if we face a third party interested in having a connection with the Italian banking market, we are able through a single API, through a single connections, to open to these third parties all the Italian market. So we are able to reach 100% of the Italian banks, enabling the third party business. Of course, also thanks to our DNA and our history, we are focused on the design and the development of a great infrastructure, a collaborative infrastructure, which can support adequately fintech, third parties, and financial institutions. The third party or the fintech, which wanna adopt a certain kind of application of a certain kind of solutions, is free to integrate these kinds of solutions on our infrastructure. We are totally agnostic from this point of view, because our core business is to define and to have and to manage collaborative infrastructures able to support all the financial institutions. In the last months, we focus our attention, and we are now in the third phase of the open banking life from a CBI perspective, on some value-added services. And this is the reason why we launched last year also the IBAN check, also named as IBAN validation service, which is instead a service enabling an online check, a real-time check of the correctness of the correspondence between an IBAN code and a VAT code or a fiscal code. And thanks to this service, for instance, a company could immediately check if an IBAN is correct or less. And these kinds of functionality is well integrated in different kinds of use cases, like for instance the refunds of the onboarding of final users, and could be adopted and integrated in a clear logic of microservice within different and more complex products of banks, of fintech products as well, or companies like, for instance, telco, multi-utilities, in order to deliver to the final user a complex service more addressed to the customer needs.
Yeah. Now, from the beginning of our conversation, we're very much talking about an evolution of open banking and of CBI. But what you said there just really shows that it's not just an evolution, it's really an ecosystem as well. For the fact that you work with the third parties and also the institutions, you're really at the heart of this new ecosystem. Now, one thing that obviously can provide huge value is, as you mentioned, that IBAN realignment and making sure that the data's perfect. But what value can open banking actually provide some of the institutions? Because to them, obviously, it's about reducing risk in that bottom line. So what value can open banking services do for banks, and how does CBI and how do you see CBI actually envisage it happening?
Yeah, thank you for this question, because it's very interesting. We know that the competitive scenario is characterized by low interest rates, low margin on payments, and the growing competition within financial markets. So financial institutions in general are now facing a sliding door, represented by the rise of digital and open banking, as well as the rise and the increase of competition within the same market. So financial institutions could serve this opportunity, adopting open banking and open finance in order to take a position within the market, in order to defend, to protect their last mile relationships with the final users, and also to make business, in order to enable to enable upselling and cross-selling strategies, for instance, within marketing activities, or to monetize their data and to deliver innovative services integrated with functionalities offered by third parties. In my opinion, next generation of value-added services will be focused on digital onboarding, on your customer activities, on innovative payments, as, for instance, buy now, pay later, or request to pay, for instance, in order to give you an idea. But I think that the traditional banks had to take a position within the market, because thanks to open banking now our market is open, and it's open also to new competitors and new entrants which are very interested to gain some market share within the market. So it's very important to protect these fields in order to gain new market share and to defend the market share that the banks today have, and the trust that the banks have from their customers. But in order to do so, the banks have to invest in open banking and open finance, because the customer experience is the first choice of the final user, and the second one is to have services linked with complex products which could be perceived with a higher value from the final user.
Yeah, it really has finally become an industry where people will actively go and choose their retail bank. Depending on the products that they offer, it's become a very consumer-friendly market, whereas before the joke was always you would choose which bank your family had always banked with and you stuck with it. But now we're seeing huge amounts of customer transference, and it's absolutely brilliant now. The banks really do have to offer up those new product lines. Now, continuing on this theme of ecosystem as well that we've been bringing up, most open banking services depend, or at least count on, partnerships, and you were just saying that the institutions, the banks, need to start looking at partnering with other organizations to start looking at leveraging open banking. But I'm interested to see how CBI embraces partnerships and how you work together with other organizations to make sure that when you go to the institutions or the third parties, you have the most comprehensive catalog really of openness and partnerships.
Yeah, we know from our experience that we have mainly three different kinds of ways to make open finance. We can acquire some companies as fintechs, for instance. We can draft services from scratch, or we can reach partnership with some companies. In the first two cases, you need high investments, and you need a lot of time, because you have a time to market worse than the one that you can face in case of partnership. So this is the way, this is the reason why the partnership are so usual within the open banking and the open finance landscape. As CBI, we sign different partnerships in the open finance landscape. And I think that it's very important to grow ecosystem within which each player can perform at its best. So as stated a few minutes ago, we have within our DNA the development and the management of collaborative infrastructures, and we are focused on the supply of innovative solutions to the financial industry, while other players, for instance, are focused on the development of services characterized by a super customer experience, and which are also more able to give answer to the market demand. In the last year, for instance, we signed two different kinds of partnerships with two important players. One partnership we signed is with our technical solutions, with our technical supply. It's a great company named Nexi Payments. We signed also another partnership with CRIF, which is a company leader in knowledge-based solutions, which offer, thanks to and through CBI Globe Solution, some applications in BFM business and credit scoring services. And we signed also another partnership with an important certification company named InfoCert, which offered digital certificates needed by companies in order to perform and to operate within the PSD2 landscape. So as you can see, we opt for the partnership, the commercial partnership with these players in order to enrich our offer, in order to integrate our services with some functionalities that CBI could not sell directly to the market due to reasons linked with the time to market, or also to a problem related to higher investments that we could face in order to deliver these kinds of service.
Yeah. Now, I think that's so important, and seeing that evolution of CBI has been critical. Having that RegTech offering and having that down is so critical in this industry where trust is so important, and hearing that and then having that partnerships on top of it is just absolutely brilliant. So Alessio, I just got to say a massive thank you. We've come to time. I also want to say a massive thank you to our audience as well for watching, and you can catch the rest of the series over at ffnews.com, and of course YouTube, Vimeo and LinkedIn, of course, where you'll see me in the comments. But Alessio, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed yourself as well. Thank you for telling us everything about CBI, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Yeah, thank you guys. See you soon.
See you soon.